But today we have Steve Thayer. So can we start with the same way everybody has started? Can you just introduce yourself a little bit?
I think most of you know me, but I'm Steve Thayer. I have lived in DeWitt 47 years now. And my wife and I raised our daughter Erin here. By the way, my wife couldn't be with us today because she's in a family wedding in Michigan, so she's going to watch the replay along with my daughter. So anyway, our daughter Erin is married to our son-in-law Jason. They have two little girls, a 2.5-year-old named Isabel and a little over a 2-month-old named Celine, and they live in Barrington, Illinois. And we just have enjoyed DeWitt. We had chances to leave. My wife was an educator here at Central DeWitt. She was in charge of the high school and middle school libraries for a lot of years. And she was also a Spanish teacher during her career. So we had opportunities to leave DeWitt over the years for one reason or another, and we just decided to stay because it was a place that we had confidence our daughter would be safe and just the environment for her to grow up in.
Okay, thank you for that. So am I right that you grew up Catholic? No.
No, you're wrong.
I'm wrong. I have had the completely wrong image of Steve in my head this entire time. No, what church did you grow up in if you grew up?
I grew up in the First Presbyterian Church in a town called Odebolt, Iowa. And for those of you who have never heard of Odebolt, there's a famous football player that played for the University of Iowa and now the Philadelphia Eagles. His name is Cooper DeJean. And he's from Odebolt, which moves me down to the second most famous person from Odebolt. But that's where I grew up, and we went to church there every Sunday. My dad was very faithful to that. My grandmother was probably the church lady there. Nothing went on in that church without her approval or knowing about it. And every Sunday I had the Sunday school, the perfect attendance pins for Sunday school, and that's what we did.
Yeah, did you enjoy going to church? Did you like doing it?
Yeah, my dad sang in the choir, so I was fun watching him. You know, we knew everybody. It was a small town. We knew everybody, and a lot of my classmates. I think there were 8 of us in our confirmation class.
Okay.
And it was really a nice experience.
Yeah. So what then brought you to? So I'm trying to go through time now that you've messed up my entire idea of your life. So eventually you came to First Congregational. What brought you here? And if I'm right, what brought you here the first time?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like a lot of college kids, I went off to college and I kind of ignored the church for quite a few years and went off and on, went on holidays and stuff when I went back home, and then I met my wife Tricia, and she was a devout Roman Catholic, and so I'd go to church off and on with her when we were dating. We got married in the Catholic Church in Jessup, Iowa. Then we moved to DeWitt in 1979. They didn't have a Presbyterian church here, and I really didn't want to be a Methodist. So I looked around and found this church and found the people in it and knew I'd found a home.
Okay. And then at some point, though, you stopped going here. So how did that work?
Our daughter went to St. Joe's School here in town. My wife, again, a devout Catholic, and we raised our child in the Catholic Church. And I was doing a lot of volunteer, as a parent of a kid that goes to St. Joe's, you're expected to do a lot of volunteer things for the school. And I had no problem with that, and we did. And we found out all my time was spent volunteering there. A lot of our friends were parents of other students there. And Tricia and I talked about it, and I just decided maybe it was time to be together in church as a family. And so I went through the training, I guess you'd call it, to become a Catholic. And, you know, I didn't think there was a lot of difference, but there's certain 3 or 4 things that were quite different from the way I'd grown up. One of them was they had what they call confession. Now, I grew up thinking I could go out in the middle of a hayfield and confess myself to the Lord, and he'd listen, he'd hear me, and answer my prayers one way or another. Well, the Catholic Church feels that you should go through an intermediary on earth and go to confession. So I had to go to confession before they'd let me join the church, and I remember driving down there that night thinking I had 42 years of sinning going on, and what was I going to tell this guy? Father Denning made it really easy on me, and you know, we had a good chat, and afterwards he told me to go read some Bible verses, and it was a better experience than I thought it'd be.
All right, yeah, that is one of the big differences between Catholics and Protestants generally, but really one of the differences between a priest and a pastor is a priest is very much kind of an intermediary between a person and God. Like they're bridging a gap, and a pastor's kind of just a guy. Maybe a little bit more than that, but we don't have the same kind of intermediary relationship that if you feel the need to confess, you can come to me and we can talk through stuff, or you can go out in the middle of a field and talk to God, and God will hear you, and we trust that. Yeah, some of that stuff. So you became Catholic, you did the official conversion.
I did.
And started going there. How did you, so you talked a little bit about that confession, but how did you find being Catholic for a while?
One of the things that always upset me about the Catholic Church is if I wasn't Catholic, I could not take communion in the Catholic Church. I grew up in a church that believed the same thing this church believes. No matter who you are or where you are in life, you are welcome to communion at our church. And that's the way I grew up, and I've had a few discussions over the years with some Catholics about my feelings, and they taught me their feelings about being Catholic and communion. One is Rick's brother-in-law and I have had a couple discussions about that. And he's a devout Catholic, and we still disagree, but it's the way it is. So yeah, I dove into the church, volunteering in the school, and they used to have fish fries on Friday nights during the land up at the old Knights of Columbus Hall, and I worked those cooking fish, and I kept score at basketball games, and I lectured, and I served communion, and I did all the things that I enjoyed doing in the Catholic Church.
Okay, yeah. And then at some point then you came back here. So what led to shifting kind of back to, I'm going to become a Congregationalist again?
Yeah, well, I always missed this church. I always missed the people here, and not that I never saw them, but I wasn't part of the church family. And I mentioned I was 42 years old when I joined. I was 62 years old when I left the Catholic Church. And that was a time the church was going through some turmoil with the priests and the abuse of kids, and I don't know. I just felt that I wasn't shocked that was going on. What shocked me is that they tried to cover it up, and that was kind of the last straw for me with the Catholic Church. I couldn't abide by that. Yeah. And I know, I mean, my wife, my friends, I mean, they're so embarrassed by that whole issue with the church. But I call my wife a cradle Catholic. She'll never change, and God bless her. She believes. But I could change, and so at age 62, I came back here.
Okay, and were welcomed back with open arms, I assume. Yeah.
No doubt.
What did you find that a lot had changed here when you came back? Like, I mean, that's 20 years away. Was it the same church that you remembered, or was it kind of a different thing?
Yeah, it was pretty much the same church, a lot of the same people. When I first belonged, they had a young couples club that they invited my wife and I to be part of. I think Rick and Gayleen were part of that. And they met monthly, and we talked and had fun and shared our faith with each other. And I remember when my wife was pregnant with our daughter, those people in that club bought us a really nice wooden high chair as a gift, and we still have that high chair. So that that was part of the makeup of this church that I really enjoyed, and a lot of those people were still here, and I found it very simple, very easy to come back.
Okay, yeah. So one thing that I do know about you, and you've mentioned it a couple of times in the context of St. Joe's, but you volunteer a lot. You are, which is true of so many people in this congregation, that you work with a bunch of different organizations, and I see you across the street at CPAC for stuff, and all of that. How does that connect to your faith and your? Because I think that those are rooted in each other in a way.
You know, I think you're right. I've not thought about that a lot, but I think you're right. I just, my family and I have been blessed. The communities we've lived in, the churches we've belonged to, our friends, and it just, it humbles me to have things go that well for us. And so just the urge to give back to the community, to the church, to our friends. That's what drives me, and I'm slowly backing away from some of that. But there's still some things that I truly believe in and still stick with and plan to for as long as I can.
Yeah?
As long as I can be effective, okay, I'll put it that way.
That's fair, yeah. No, and that's good. It's nice to know those. It is important to be aware of your own limits, right? And to say, like, okay, I'm not as useful as I used to be, and find ways to keep being useful and keep being productive and keep giving, but the ways that we can do that change over time. Right. Do you have like I don't want to ask you for a favorite thing that you do as a volunteer, but do you have some stuff that's like top 3, like I love doing this?
I'm a member of our local hospital foundation board. And that's probably one of the last things I'll ever give up. I just enjoy. We have a CEO at the hospital right now. Ted Rogalski is his name. He is an outstanding leader. And he comes to our monthly meetings and informs us of what's going on in healthcare, what's going on in healthcare in DeWitt, what's going on with the bigger picture of Genesis, the organization. And I just really am interested in that field, and so yeah, I'll stay with that for as long as I can.
Yeah, and that's got to be both fascinating and incredibly complicated.
It is. It is, and frustrating too sometimes. You know, this church, that's another favorite. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff here.
Yeah,
volunteered a lot of stuff, and pretty much enjoyed every minute of it. I mean, I wouldn't change anything.
Excellent.
So again, there's going to be a limit to when I stop being effective, but I love it.
Wonderful, good. In case anybody doesn't know, right now Steve is our treasurer and has long served on various financial committees, which ties into your professional life really well, and does a really good job. And one of the things that I appreciate, not just about you, but about our whole church, and I was talking to Mariah about this, I think, after the last council meeting, is sometimes I look at the financials and go, oh no, what are we going to do? And then I go to a council meeting and you're there going, it's all fine.
Well, it's all fine with limitations.
Right. Somehow we'll figure it out. Like sometimes the pastor does not quite have the faith.
Yeah. In other words, don't stop giving. We still need that.
We still do, but I appreciate your openness to saying we will make it work, and really to the whole congregation's openness and the council's openness to we will find a way to get through even these times that are sometimes feel a little leaner and a little harder. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did want to ask you, if I can, about family life, because I know that you and your wife, I mean, she's Catholic, you're at First Congregational, you are politically different, you have some differences, which I think is really wonderful and good. How does that work, I guess, is the bluntest way to put it, but how do you, because I think one of the things that is really important, especially today, is finding ways to disagree well, and to be in a place where we can still form community and family, even if we have some disagreements. So can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, as far as our faith, we both respect each other's faith, and there are what we want to glean from our faith and our faith experiences. I would never, ever ask Tricia to leave the Catholic Church. And she, in turn, would never, ever ask me to come back to the Catholic Church. So that's an understanding that we've had since we got married. Now, politically, I mentioned Tricia was at a family wedding in Michigan this weekend. All her family, her sisters, her brothers, cousins, whatever. I and one of her brothers are probably the token Republicans for that family. The rest of them are all Democrat, and they're not far left Democrats. They believe in some democratic planks, and I don't.
Yeah.
And so that's never been a problem. We're both kind of toward the middle. Mm-hmm. She's not far left, she's toward the middle. I'm not far right, I'm toward the middle. So we have a lot of common things that we agree on. So that's probably why it works that way. But there are disagreements once in a while.
Which are handled lovingly and caringly. Yeah.
For the most part, yes.
Well, I will. So you talked a little bit about why you chose this reading today, because you love nature and because it's one of the first things that you memorized, which I think is wonderful. You also chose two of the hymns, an Amazing Grace, which is a well-loved hymn. I think everybody enjoys that one and loves that, and that's often a first kind of memory of a hymn is Amazing Grace. But you also chose Lo, How a Rose Ere Blooming, which we'll sing closer to the end of the service. Can you talk a little bit about what made you choose that one?
Well, back to Amazing Grace. I don't know if any of you remember Carolyn Eggleston. A group of us sang that song at her funeral. And she requested it through her husband to have that sung at her funeral, and I was thrilled about that because I love the harmony in that song. I love the message. Then Lo, How a Rose Ere Blooming, just the message. Mm-hmm. I take a lot of songs, and I really don't equate them to me, my feelings, but those are a couple of them that I have. Mm-hmm. And what the words mean to me is special, and that's why I chose both of them.
Okay, yeah. It is nice to have those, and I think we all have those hymns of just they're the ones that speak to us somehow. Yeah. So last question. If this church could be or do one thing, if you money was no object, volunteers, time, we could just do it, what would that thing be for you?
I think the big picture thing that I would like to see this church is to get back the level of vibrancy that this congregation had. Not that we don't have that, but I mentioned the Young Couples Club. Mm-hmm. Gosh, fill this church with children on Sundays. That's the things I'm talking about as far as vibrancy goes. Yeah. And it's one of the things I loved about the church when I first came here. And, for whatever reason, I know COVID was a big thing, and it hurt a lot of church communities. But to get back the vibrancy which this church had, 30, 40 years ago, I'm not a person that likes to go backwards, but to regain that, I think would be a move forward now. So that's what I'd like to see.
Well, that actually gives me a nice little segue, because our next series is going to be called A Future Ready Church, and it's based a little bit in a book called Becoming a Future Ready Church. Okay. And one of the things that book talks about is, life has changed a lot in 30 years. life has changed a lot in like 5 years, but it has changed a lot in 30 years. And a lot of us remember, what churches were like 30 years ago. And while we can't just go back, we want to catch that feeling. And so how do we move forward in a way that speaks to a new generation and new people who maybe don't so much remember 30 years ago, but kind of recapture those feelings and those flavors of living in a way that works today? So we get to have a whole conversation over the course of several weeks. And I will include a link to where you can buy the book in the e-news, so that if you want to really follow along, you can do that. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your taking the time and coming up here and talking a little bit about your faith journey and your back and forth and the things that you love so much.
I enjoy doing it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, a big round of applause.